I'll call order the special meeting for the City of East Grand Forks for July 11th, 2023. It is now 5 o'clock. The City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstead.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riopel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Ben Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Brian Larson. Karen Peterson.
Does term quorum. Number 1, consider declaring the list of vehicles, power chair, bicycles, and sonar equipment as surplus and authorize them to be sold at auction. Is there a motion? Moved by Helms. Second by Riopel. Chief, do you have anything to add?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory, same thing we've done every year for many years.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Roll call, please.
Olstead.
Yes.
Vetter.
Yes.
Pakshavinsky.
Yes.
Riopel.
Yes.
Helms.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Helms, second by Riopel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned. Called to order the work sessions for City of East Grand Forks for July 11, 2023. It is now 5:01. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstead.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riopel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Ben Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Brian Larson. Karen Peterson.
Does term quorum. We'll move on. Right, number 1, update on recycling from Countrywide Sanitation. I got Mr. Stordahl and also Countrywide in here with Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Rachel from Countrywide Sanitation and some of our staff are here tonight just to let council and everyone know a little bit about some changes that are going to take place with as far as the glass recycling goes. And with that, I'll just turn it off to Rachel and her staff.
Sure. Again, Rachel Granovich with Countrywide Sanitation. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. We just wanted to talk in terms of the recycling program and what changes that we wanted to take effect. We're asking to remove glass out of the single stream. Excuse me. We're asking to take glass out of the single stream. We won't 100% get rid of the glass. However, what we'd like to do is have another container offered at the drop site that would specifically take the glass and then remove it out of the single stream. There's a lot of complications with glass being in the single stream. It's causing complications on a nationwide level. It's real harsh on the belts, hard on the floors, and our end market simply wants it separated now. It's not like we're going to completely take it out, but we would like it to have it dropped off at the drop center. I'd also like to introduce with me tonight is Cole Haig. He's in operations and business development with me. Been with our company for quite a while now, and you handle a lot of the operational issues with operational needs for Countrywide and so forth. And I'm going to turn it over to him to talk a little bit about this as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, and thank you guys. And we also wanted to thank the city for the business over the past 9 years that we've been hauling the residential. It is really important to us that we have good communication with the city, and we like to work with the public works that you guys have here, and it's been very positive since I've been with Countrywide, working with the city of East Grand Forks, so we wanted to thank you guys as well. Back to what Rachel was talking about with the mixed recycling, we've been following suit with many other communities in the region, such as Moorhead and Fargo and other communities that we haul with to eliminate the glass, because simply the markets that we send our recycling to aren't willing to accept glass in as a mixed recycling. They want it all separate, where we can still recycle that glass. So that's been a new change in that market, and the market's gotten really tight on recycling, and so we're trying to be proactive and bring this to the city as soon as we were aware of this issue. And other communities are really struggling with this, not just in the Red River Valley, but it's a nationwide issue with the recycling markets. one of the areas that we've been working on and trying to be proactive on is educational pieces that we're planning to send out to the residents in communities to notify them of changes and what's acceptable, unacceptable in recycling containers to hopefully reduce contamination and notify residents of these changes. You know, just saying it on paper and the city council making a decision to eliminate glass doesn't actually doesn't always educate the public, and we wanted to take it a step further and help work with Public Works to get this education out. Another item that we're working on is getting signage up at the green site that lists out acceptable and unacceptable materials for the containers, the various containers at that green site. And so when the general public is there, there's a visual that they can see and know what they should and shouldn't be dumping in those containers. So we can, again, reduce that contamination and try to have better participation, because when the recycling isn't contaminated, it's good for everyone. It's good for the environment. It reduces the landfill bill for the city. There's a whole plethora of positives for the whole community. So that reduction in contamination is something we're really focused on right now, with as tight as the market is and the increase in freight prices for recycling.
And having to not bale it anymore and ship it loose, which has been another challenge that we're working with. And instead of baling it, we're going to start compacting it instead and shipping it in walking floor trailers, and that's what we're doing. And Cole, we should also mention that we did a postcard that we're going to send out, ourselves to every resident in the city of East Grand Forks. So we would take we would take on that expense and mail it all out, and we had provided that postcard to the Public Works Department as well for approval. We've been hauling, like I said, Cole said, for 9 years. There's other things that we've been doing, fixing carts. There's still repairs that are done on a weekly basis. People call and need their cart, their lids repaired, their bodies repaired on the carts, their wheels. So we work on that on a weekly basis.
We have seen an uptick in the maintenance issues on the carts mainly due to when the contract started 9 years ago. Now those assets are depleting, and there's need of a lot more repairs than in year 1, 2, and 3. So we took a approach this winter, and we've got still a lot more work to do.
We were proactive at one point, and we actually went one step further and just went out on garbage days and just started repairing carts. And we had a multitude of list of them, but we still get them on a weekly basis. How many this week?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Like 30 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have somebody almost part-time just maintaining and repairing the carts, and I think that's just because of the length of time we've had them.
The glass and the glass and the contamination issues are an important thing to bring up to the city, and it was important enough to where we wanted to send out the educational pieces, and we want to help the city address
those things,
those issues and opportunities that hopefully we can continue to do.
I guess what we've just really closely looking at the loads that are coming in and stuff, I think we need to take a look at maybe the size of containers that are out for garbage. I'm just wondering if at times that the recycling cart isn't the overflow for the garbage cart. And so thus there are some high levels of contamination in some dumpsters, including grass, trees, bags of just garbage. That's what we're really looking at right now. Typically, Now, when we set up, like if we were to set up another community, we'd usually go with the same size cart, a 96-gallon for garbage and a 96-gallon for recycling.
With the smaller garbage containers, in other communities where we have the larger garbage containers, the overflow is less of an issue. And I know that we have heard from various residents that would like a larger size, but it isn't offered in the city of East Grand Forks. And it's potentially an opportunity to help with mitigating some of that contamination that we've been experiencing on the recycling end of things.
Jason, you have something?
Just wondering if anybody has any questions as far as the glass recycling goes.
Better.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once or twice a year, I always get a comment from a citizen saying, I don't recycle because they just take it out to the landfill and dump it out there anyway. What's your response to questions, comments like that?
The only, and that's a fair statement, any curbside recycling cart that we've ever picked up for recycling, we have never landfilled, ever.
We'd love to show you or any other council members our facility there where we do our baling and our recycling program. We have cardboard recycling program, and we'd be happy to give anybody a tour of it that would like to see what we do with it and where we ship it out of here. It's all shipped down to Minneapolis to Shakopee, and we send out at about a tractor trailer worth a week of mixed recycling from your community and from other communities. It's a substantial amount, and that's after it's been baled and compacted down. So.
Again, it's the educational piece. It's the drop site container that we will have an issue with that may have to go to a landfill because of the, vacuum cleaners. What else? People just throw everything and anything in there, and it makes it rough. It makes it hard for everybody who's trying to do the right thing. I know that there has been talk about that, but that's not a true statement. Like even for the city of Grand Forks, it's truly recycled. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep. Anybody else? Mr. Helms.
Thank you. You talked about the cart maintenance when you send out the information on the new recycling deal. Could you maybe have a phone number and maybe something in there that says that if you have any needing repairs on these things, you could call us? If there's some out there that somebody needs to get done, or
It's on there already.
Is it on there already?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. And then the other thing is, are you saying that you don't want homeowners to recycle glass at all in your stuff, or?
Right.
That
Well,
is-
not in the single stream, not in
Yes.
the carts.
Okay, so then they just throw it in the regular garbage?
Either in the regular trash, or we're willing to do some a drop site at the green site where
Or-
glass would be
Or we
recycled.
could look at a couple of sites. I don't know. The more sites you have, maybe a little harder to control, but we'd be
Okay.
willing at no extra expense to the city of East Grand Forks to put a container there just specifically for glass bottles and jars.
Sure. Okay, I was just curious if
Yeah.
that's what you were actually saying, that there would be no more glass in there also.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for him?
Okay.
She did.
Yeah. Anything else anybody needs to add? Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Well,
everyone.
Thank you for having
Yes,
us.
thank you.
We appreciate it. So,
Thank you, Jason.
yep. Thanks, Jason.
I'll move on to number 2, request for reapply for additional LaFave park funding. Reid.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. I've started working on the application process for the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails again on our LaFave Park project. I think looking mainly for discussion on the total project request and a local match if there's any desire to increase the local funds committed to the grant request. In the packet, I did include for you kind of a side-by-side comparison of what we applied for in 2021. That total amount, construction subtotal being $1.067 million. And then I put the side-by-side in places where it is applicable, compared the low bid estimate or the low bid price that we received back in May with what we used as our estimates when we applied for the grant. And then as you look at that spreadsheet, there are a number of items that were added as we got final design specs done that are maybe a little more detailed than just lump sum numbers that we used when we applied for the grant. But it gives you a little side-by-side comparison for that total construction subtotal, the low bid being $1.957 million. So I think the first request or discussion point would be on the local match. When we committed to this project in 2021, we committed to a 25% local share of eligible expenses. That number was $290,193, and there were a few items that the city would have additionally paid for on its own. Those being the engineering fees above the 10% of construction subtotal. That number we estimated would be about $53,000, and the improvements to add ADA accessible sidewalks at the 2 softball fields at a number of $12,500. Those items would not be grant eligible in our 2021 application. As we look at that now, under the low bid that we received in May at $1.9 million, of course that high number changes the percent of what our expected engineering costs are. So I haven't had a lot of discussion with Steve on it. We have an agreement signed with Widseth that the design was committed to for $95,000, plans and specs, and then the staking and inspection fee, that number will probably grow or adjust some based on what the total project ends up being. But the estimate that Steve had given Mr. Murphy when that agreement was signed was $63,500. If that was the number today, compared to the total project, it would be 8.1%. So those numbers would all fall into grant eligible reimbursement because they're less than 10%. So I say that because that would mean that the full $331,000 of the city's planned $343,000 contribution would be grant eligible. So when you compare that with the total project cost, I'm building up to what our local match would be. If we didn't commit any additional funds to the project locally, when we apply at the end of July, our local match would fall into that 15 or 16% area. That's important because we get reviewed on a scoring system out of 100 points. That would mean a 6-point difference from a 25% match. I don't know the detail or have the detail of what our total score was when we applied in 2021. I tried searching for that. It's not available on the public website. I recall it being somewhere in the 78 to 80 point area out of 100. And where that fell in that grant cycle when we were awarded, we were ranked like 5th or 6th on the list is what my recollection is. So we weren't the highest scored project by any means, but there were 12 communities or counties that received funding that year, so we weren't the lowest either. For what that's worth, what 6 points would mean, that's up for grabs every year, and what the projects look like and how the evaluation team scores them. So in order to get to a 20% match, we would need to come with an additional roughly $70,000 in addition to what we already have kind of committed to the project. Funding sources and where we could find to do that, in discussing with Ms. Anderson, the best potential option for that we can find is we do still have the American Rescue Plan dollars that are uncommitted, roughly $650,000. That's maybe a little low. I didn't write that exact number down. After Water and Light has done some lead line projects with some of it. We've kind of committed generally that we would use those funds for park and rec improvements when we're ready to do those. There is some urgency, I think, potentially to get those dollars encumbered sooner than later. As we've listened to the federal dialogue about the ceiling, the debt ceiling issue, there was a lot of discussion about pulling back those ARPA funds. I haven't heard that that was an official decision that was made, but at any rate right now those are dollars that we still have sitting in our account unencumbered, and they wouldn't necessarily have to be spent immediately, but if we committed to them to like a project like this, Carla could submit that they've been encumbered, and it'd make it more difficult for the feds to come back and take them back from us. So with that, I think I'm open for any discussion or questions.
One of my thought processes on this is that you have the other communities that ran into the same issues that we've run into with the dollar amounts of the cost of the projects. Do you foresee that, since they're probably looking at the same thing? Well, before we had 20%, now we're going to go back down to 15. Do you think they're going to run in the same situation where, well, we don't have the extra money to go back, stay at the 20%, so they're going to drop themselves? So they're going to drop the points too. So I think maybe they're not. I don't. I'm just because everybody's got to be in the same position as we are.
Right. It's a good. Yeah. That's a great question. I haven't had any discussion with other communities that are planning to come back, with the exception of Crookston. Crookston is planning on reapplying for a project they had funded 5 years ago and haven't been able to complete, to ask for more funding to finish their shower bathhouse on their campground project. They have, I don't know where their money sits, but they feel comfortable that they're going to be able to come with the full match. Now, that said, quickly, one thing that will help us out is we apply jointly, and so the match is viewed as a total joint dollar amount. So Crookston's match, if they're planning on coming in with the full 25%, and we come in at 15, that's going to bring our number up and their number down a little, because it's like based on the total cumulative application ask. Other communities, I know there's 2 or 3 other communities that have received funding that plan on applying again to try to make up the difference, and there are another 9 or 10 communities or counties that have new projects that we're expecting applications for. So those would be new situations that they're coming with a new, entirely new project that hasn't been funded, and presumably a fully funded local match.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Mayor?
I think it's clear, but for everybody, for clarity, all that we're applying for now is the added increment. We have the approval on the first amount. That is not in jeopardy. We're just going for this added increment. And so a denial on this increment would not be a denial on the initial funds, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Riepel?
In that ARPA account, we have what?
That's a better number than I do.
Yes, before I talked with Reid, it was 700,000 in there, and the lead lines that we have left with Water and Light, our plan is to apply for grants for that. And with the grant, the way it's written now, is that any personal citizen that has lead lines would be fully funded, so there wouldn't be a match. If it was lead lines that the city owns, we would have a 20% match. So Steve and his group are working on the inventory of them and working on putting a grant in to get them funded.
So the 70,000 additional you're talking about, we'd have funding available through ARPA?
And the discussion was not even to use the pool, maybe the pool dollars, save those for when the arena project comes, and use all of the ARPA dollars as a match. Besides the, there are some dollars that are going to come out of the street because the street's getting fixed. And so, we'll work with Jason to see what that exact amount is. But yeah, our discussion was to use the ARPA dollars for the match for anything that's not covered by other city funds. There was a few, we had on there a couple, some dollars set aside for picnic areas that was going to come out of the building maintenance. And of course, that would be a choice that we could just take them out of the ARPA dollars. We could save it in the, save the money in the building maintenance, because that will never go away too. In fact, we did even, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
I was just going to see if anybody else has any questions regarding Reid's request.
Is there a deadline by which we must encumber all of our ARPA dollars?
Yes,
What is it?
12/31/2024.
12/31/24.
So in fact, when Reid and I were discussing this, there are, basically we can use that money for whatever the city would choose. And sorry, Nancy wasn't part of the conversation, but we did even talk about that we could pay for the roof for City Hall just so the money got spent. And we could save that money in the building maintenance, use that building maintenance money in the arenas or other projects. So there are some ways to spend that money down. We have a couple large projects coming.
Reid, you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add two comments. The comments on the ARPA dollars, initially the discussion had been using them for rec projects. We haven't brought forward a recreation project to be used because the dollar amount is not enough to cover one single element of our arena improvements that need to be made. We'd still need additional city funds, so that's maybe the reason for some lack of action there. The comment as it pertains to the grant and the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Commission, I sit on that commission, and at the meeting in June, the discussion was, I think, really strong. The commissioners want to see these projects completed as they were applied for 2-3 years ago. So I think there's a large interest amongst the commission that we get enough funding to pay for what we initially asked for. There's a lot of money available in this fund, but with that said, the commission members also, I got the general feeling, would like to see, if possible, cities and counties come with some additional funding to make up the difference. And so, as I see it, if I was going to offer a recommendation to it, I would try to meet in the middle and get to a 20% match. Then we're still bringing some additional funding for this rise in cost, but we can reference the local challenges we have in that we can't get all the way to the 25% we initially committed to. That'd be my recommendation.
Keith, you have something, sir?
Yeah, I guess since you were talking about the ARPA dollars, we've had a couple meetings here with Steve and others, and what we're finding out is that with the grant, the first part is like you get 3 choices, and one of them is doing the inventory, and so they're going to do the inventory before they would go on to replacing the water service lines themselves. And so they also stated that it would go into, the projects would be accumulated into a list and then yet to be determined kind of how they would determine what priorities. But coming from the state, I probably think it would probably be something to do with lower income, things like that, maybe higher, when you take samples, maybe have a higher parts per billion, et cetera, things like that. And so we just started thinking about this today, actually, so that's why I'd come up here to sit down. And one of the thoughts that we had was to try get some of the ARPA dollars, but we're not talking, if we go out and bid it ourselves, we're not talking like we did last year where it was like $11,900 per service line. When we first did it, it was about $5,000, then it upped substantially when the inflation went up. And so what we're thinking is if we can bid it out, and if it's like the dollar amount, I think it would probably be, if say it's $5,500 a service, and there's 7 of them right now, that 35 add in some engineering, add in some contingency, maybe we get 50,000 and we could take care of the rest of them and be done with it. And we'd probably be, that would probably be smart money versus waiting for the list. We still do our inventory, we still apply for the grant, but just the unknowns about how they're going to set up the program and when you're going to be able to do it, how long it takes, we thought maybe it would make sense to ask you for the 50 to just finish it off. So I just throw that out there for something for you to ponder on, and I did send something to Tim because he's our liaison. I just did that today. So
Yeah, I was at a state meeting and they talked about how, they're trying to fund all of them. I guess, the state might look at if, there's only 7 lines left in East Grand Forks. But if we fund those lines, we can say that community is lead-free. So,
that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, so, I guess my suggestion is that we would look at going for the grants, and if we didn't have that money, the grants aren't available, then we could look to see where there's other funds to use.
So with Reid's recommendation of doing a 20% match, and is everybody on board with that? Or
And just so I'm crystal clear also on that, you've brought in the total at $442,794. That also includes roughly the $343,168 that would have been our match on the first part. So we're talking about another slice of about $100,000.
Yeah.
plus or minus.
Correct.
Anybody have any questions on that, or is everybody fine with that?
I think that's good faith way to go at it. To them to show that, yep, we'll put some more skin in the game. You shouldn't have to pick up all the inflation. I think that's appropriate.
I think just worth noting too, it's that we're committing to the percent match. So when the prices come back lower than these were bid in May, and it's better for us, it's going to bring our local commitment down as well.
Yep. Anything else, sir?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Move on to number 3, request to begin promotional process. Begin with promotional process. Spelled wrong. I said bean. It's okay. I probably would have read it wrong anyway. So,
my fault.
Process for rank of corporal. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you very much. During the course of our most difficult hiring process this past spring, we wound up ultimately having to move Nick Gunderson out of the schools as the school resource officer onto one of our shifts to serve as a shift corporal. As we're beginning to slowly make some progress on that front, we are anticipating being able to move him back into the schools in late September. And at that point in time, that would leave an opening on one of our shifts for corporals. So I would like to begin a process to be able to select our next corporal. This would actually create a list in case we do have additional openings, which there's a very decent possibility that we could have additional openings over the course of the next year that the list would be good for. But the one for sure would be this fall when Corporal Gunderson goes back to the schools.
Anybody have any questions for Chief on that? See none, sir. Move on to number 4, request to begin selection process for position of police investigation positions assigned to the Pine to Prairie Drug Task Force. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you. We are doing a variety of personnel moves within the police department. Sergeant Dennis Robertson is retiring next month, and we are transitioning, at least on a temporary basis, Sergeant Tony Hart from investigations out into patrol, and he'll take over as a shift supervisor for, as I mentioned, at least a temporary basis. President Olstead is on our drug task force board, and of course the mayor is according to the charter, partially in charge of the police department. So I've had a couple meetings with them where we've discussed this and trying to figure out our best way to move forward. My plan as of right now is to do a process to select a person to move into the narcotics task force as an actual task force officer. That task force still needs a task force commander, which at the present time is Sergeant Isla Schraga from our department. We are having a board meeting next week, and then the next one after that will be in about 2 months. I'm going to be throwing it out there on the agenda just for basically for people to start thinking about the board's response on how we should best move forward with that task force commander position for the meeting next week, with further discussion then planned for in 2 months. My tentative plan would be to have this new officer have the bulk of their time working as a drug task force officer on that task force, and Commander Schraga, Sergeant Schraga, would still serve as the on paper task force commander. He'd still be doing the paperwork related, which is a lot of that grant. It's a very large responsibility. He would continue doing that portion of the grant, or excuse me, of the task force commander position, but he would no longer be doing the in the field, at least as much as possible, not doing the in the field investigations. That would be onto the new investigator. Over the course of time, if we have additional movement in investigations, that could ultimately result in, and depending on how the board is able to react and how we're able to figure out who's going to ultimately be the task force commander, whether it's our training our own person to take over as the task force, or whether somebody from one of the other agencies is able to do that, those are questions that the task force board will have to figure out. But it's not anything that's going to just happen overnight. We don't have anybody right now that's ready to step in as the commander, so we do need Sergeant Schraga to continue in that role to some degree, but we want to start trying to move towards that transition of getting a new investigator in that position.
I think one of the challenges that the drug task force does have is that there's so many new officers that are on from different communities, Polk County, Crookston. So it's just something that we've had discussions over the last couple of years of, how do we handle this and how should it be run and who should handle the commander position, and one of our main thoughts is it should be from either East Grand Forks, Polk County, or Crookston, where the original Pine Prairie Drug Task Force, because everybody else is so new, but the discussion of ISIL doing it and transitioning out is going to be something that it's going to take time. You know, it's going to be 6 to 8 months, as you were talking, to get somebody up and running and trained to do it right, because there is a lot of paperwork that has to be done with the state. And Crookston right now is actually a financial location.
Crookston is, yes.
Yep. So, you know, we wouldn't have to worry about that. We just have to worry about the commander's position. And I think having a plan in place in discussion with the task force starting next week and then having the discussion 2 months down the road, hopefully we'll have some idea of who the officer would be from East Grand Forks, so we could have a discussion, even how we're going to set it up, how it's going to be run, and everything. So, I mean, there's going to be some discussions within everybody there. So I think getting ahead of it and moving forward is the best way to do it. So, Mr. Rapel.
Just to refresh myself, the investigator position is like on a 2-year rotation, or they go
Not
3?
necessarily. When we moved Detective Hart back in, it was originally going to be on a rotational basis. But in our reality, after about 2 years, you're really just starting to figure out that position. So my tentative plan would be for this person to go in, and it'd be in a perfect world, you'd be able to rotate them out after a while. There's a lot of things that may or may not happen. Lieutenant Hychek may retire next year. Doesn't have to. He's discussing it, but he has not given any firm date. Should he retire, and if we were to move in a brand new investigator, you'd now have somebody that's got less than a year, somebody else that's brand new, and then Sergeant Traga, that'd be it. So my tentative plan as of right now would be, if and when Lieutenant Hychek retires next year, to move Sergeant Hart back there, so we would still have 2 experienced investigators and 1 essentially in training. That'd be that new task force officer. And when we would actually make that transition out to move either Sergeant Hart or Sergeant Schrag out into a different position, I guess I don't want to commit to a hard 2-year rotation, just for the simple fact if that person, especially if they take over as the task force commander, 6, 8 months, a year into their time on the task force, are you really only going to have them as the task force commander for a year, and then you've got a new task force commander? There's just so many things that could come into play in the next year. I don't want to lock us into a rotation.
Okay. Are they looking at maybe, you mentioned Crookston and East Grand Forks being the 2 original members or whatever, maybe doing them for 3 years, and then we know that after 3 years we can move our guy in?
Those are absolutely things that we can discuss at the board. That just in the past, when we've tried to bring it up, or when we have brought it up, either the people that were on the board were so new, or else they just had, not on the board, but on the task force, or they just had zero interest. And with Crookston being the fiscal agent for the task force, you kind of want one of the agencies that's relatively close to Crookston, just because they were the ones involved in the original grant, and they still are the fiscal agent at this point in time. That would be problematic. I mean, everything can be done, or not everything, but a lot of things can be done, online and through Zoom meetings and things like that. But if, for example, you had a Lake of the Woods County Sheriff's Office person as the task force commander and your fiscal agent is Crookston, there's just issues that.
So that decision affects our decision
in
a lot of respects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the bad thing about the drug task force right now, we lost, officers, Border Patrol. We're not, for at least 2 years minimal.
Hoping to get them back eventually, but we at one point in time had 5 federal agents, 4 Border Patrol officers, and a Homeland Security agent. And at this point in time, we have none of those folks working on the task force. So it's literally just the agents that have been assigned to the task force from the member agencies.
Anybody else have any questions on this?
If I could,
Mayor.
Back on investigations real quick. Hats off to Chief Hedlund. I'm working real closely with our Lieutenant Rod Hychek on the question of investigations. They're coming at it from 2 slightly different directions and trying to reconcile all of that, and it's been pretty impressive just to sit back and watch the 2 of you guys try to hammer that out. And on the one hand, we can have a strong investigative unit today, which we already have, and then how do we ramp that up for any changes that might take place by getting some other folks cycled through there with some experience. And to try to reconcile those 2 different viewpoints, you guys, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? I see none, sir.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Rippel, second by Holmes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned.
I tried to get it out, but I couldn't.